Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So for this episode, I sat down and had a conversation with Alex Merced. Now, I would assume most of you guys listening to this probably already know who Alex is, but if you don't, Alex is the vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. He's also podcast host of the Alex Merced Cast and host of Nice Guys Finish Free on the Launchpad Media Network. He is also in his day job when he is not being vice chair of LP National. He is a training and marketing professional, and he also, through obviously being vice chair and also through promoting libertarianism, he promotes a message of how consent breeds reciprocity, accountability, and knowledge, which these are all topics that we kind of touch on in our conversation. And I'm sure everybody can read the title at this point. You've already clicked on it. You already kind of know what this is about. But we discuss the idea of libertarianism and people identifying openly as libertarians and kind of the weird environment we're in right now where some people are comfortable doing it, some people aren't comfortable doing it. We discuss Alex's libertarian origin story and kind of a lot of different ideas about how we can better promote the ideas of libertarianism and try to encourage people to kind of get in the tent and at least openly identify as libertarians. Not necessarily that you have to go join LP National if you don't want to, but to kind of offer a welcoming hand to people who are starting to feel politically homeless. So without going too much further into this, here is my conversation with Alex on all kinds of topics, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So I'm sitting down today with Alex Merced, and we are going to have a little bit of a chat about the L word, which I'm sure everybody has already seen the title of this episode. I'm pretty sure everybody can get the gist of what this is going to be about, but I wanted to go ahead and start with you, Alex, and because I never really get to ask anybody this question on my show, and that is, like, what is your libertarian origin story?
Well, it's pretty interesting. It doesn't involve any meteors or any toxic waste that gave me powers or anything like that. But it did involve a trip to the Philippines and Ron Paul. So now that we kind of know where it's going, let's kind of start at the beginning because it's pretty interesting. Now, I was actually formerly very, very far to the left. I was, carrying on my copy of the Corporation documentary with my copy of Dude, Where's My Country by Michael Moore while I was in college. I mean, I did have some libertarian leanings because I did really enjoy Stossel growing up. I was like an 8-year-old really anxious to watch 2020 every week. I did read Anthem by Ayn Rand while I was in high school. So those gave me some sort of individualist inclinations, some sort of questioning, but I still leaned very much to the left. But what happened was, while I was in college, I actually started a comic book store. So me and my buddy were sort of in a weird place in our lives, and we said, let's start a business. So instead, other people sit there and say, hey, let's go to Cancun for spring break. We're like, let's start a comic book store. So what happens is we pulled together I literally took the money that I had for a place to live and used it to start this store. So I actually lived in the back of the store on a futon. So we start this store, and it was actually really cool. We basically make back our money right away. It starts off on a really strong foot, but we're a bunch of college kids who'd never started a business before, so we didn't quite manage the cash very well. So it eventually did close. So in order to kind of cheer myself up, I bought a ticket to the Philippines, not knowing what I would do there, whatnot, and said, you know what? At the end of this semester, just focus on getting through this semester. At the end, I have this trip, which was May 2007. So then what happens, May 2007 comes up, I go to the Philippines, and in my apartment that I rented for the month, the only English news channel was Fox News. So as a real lefty, this was like, oh no wonder the rest of the world hates us because this is the only news channel they get, was sort of what was going through my head. And so I watch it, and there was a Republican debate on. And I wasn't really following the primary so much at the time. And then this is the Ron Paul versus Giuliani moment. And I see it, and I'm like, I agreed with everything this guy said during this debate. So I end up enjoying the rest of the trip to the Philippines. It was a good time. But then when I come back, I start Googling Ron Paul and looking into Ron Paul, and I became feverishly, like many, a big, Ron Paul guy. That got me really interested in the ideas of libertarianism. I started that kind of helped me discover like all the different libertarian institutions, Fee, Mises, Cato, etc. And I started basically reading and consuming everything I could, and I started a YouTube channel where I would make videos about what I was learning. And I did that, and now I have over 2,000 videos on YouTube. That's kind of how people got to know who I was, and that's why in 2013 the mayoral candidate for New York City, Michael Sanchez, actually called me and said, "Hey, I'm a fan of your YouTube videos. We need someone to run for public advocate here in New York City," and recruited me to run for that. And that's how I got involved with the Libertarian Party, and then the rest is history.
That might be the most interesting origin story I have heard so far. So you were in the Philippines, and you happen to have on Fox News, and you saw the Ron Paul, Rudy Giuliani infamous debate that seems to have launched 1,000 ships. But it's fascinating because, again, the whole kind of idea of this conversation is the idea of people publicly identifying as libertarian. And I can't remember the first person that ever said it to me, but I can remember one time, and this was like after I started being active on social media and stuff, and for what it's worth, like, I never gave it a second thought. Like, I put more thought into actually, like, putting my actual, at least the vast majority of my actual legal name on Twitter than I ever did as actually publicly identifying as a libertarian on Twitter or anywhere in public. And it kind of took me aback, because I was like, why? Like, what? I don't understand. But I guess now, kind of not so much being in the public eye, although I guess you could say I am at this point. I don't know. That's a really weird thing for me, but I kind of understand it a little more, but it's still one of those things where I'm not entirely comfortable with people who aren't entirely comfortable with it. And like I said, I get it, but I don't get it. So I'm trying to figure out a way to make people who are either actually are libertarians or are libertarian leaning to just come out and say that you are a libertarian, and it's not this like weird taboo thing that some people seem to think it is.
Oh, no, I totally agree. Like, I know in my experience, like, I've always kind of worn the libertarian badge very proudly. And I apologize if you hear my bird in the background. He's flown to somewhere where we can't get him, but he's a cockatiel. It's a very cute cockatiel. But I do have times where, I'll run into people, I tell them I'm a libertarian, and they don't necessarily always have the best reaction. But I would say most of the time I get people sort of just more being curious, being like, oh, is that... They're not quite sure what it is. They kind of know who Gary Johnson was, but they're not even sure if they remember that was the Libertarian Party. They just know that it's this other party. So sometimes I'll get people who are like, oh, was that the Jill Stein Party? Or was that or are those the Jesse Ventura types or whatnot? And yeah, I get all sorts of different reactions. So there's still a lot of name recognition, ID building when it comes to the term libertarian, where it's oftentimes the most polarizing is actually among people who already kind of have a defined ideology, who are generally going to be the hardest people to term. But yes, so basically, oftentimes it's people who are sort of the most already sort of politically defined who actually have a reaction to the word libertarian, which oftentimes it's almost always I like a lot of what you libertarians have to say, but over here, and here, you're crazy. And that's fine. And that's why, like, a lot of times I don't lead into a conversation with it. I'm usually, my approach to everything is always listen first and try to kind of let people paint a picture for me of who they are. So that way when I land that word or when I land the concepts, it's where I know they're going to be, where it's framed in a way that they're going to be receptive to it. And then plus, since I've already kind of listened to them and kind of built a rapport with them, they're going to be much more willing to try to understand where I'm coming from, or willing to. And oftentimes that is very much the case, because people kind of like, there's a book called The Moral Molecule by Paul Zak, which kind of demonstrate the idea that we're kind of biologically libertarian. We're biologically wired to want reciprocity, and which is what libertarianism is all about. It's all about everything being consensual and reciprocal and whatnot. So it's literally wired into the way we release oxytocin. So in that case, I try to use it to my advantage by trying to give people a reason to want to reciprocate with me before I go on the sort of ideological assault, in a sense. So there has been a sort of concerted movement or effort to try to define libertarianism by those who aren't libertarian, whether it's conservatives trying to define libertarians as libertines, or the left trying to define libertarians as, you know, the Gilded Age, people who just like lust over the Gilded Age as if it's, you know, it was a utopia. But it's time for us to sit down and focus on defining who ourselves are instead of letting everybody else define us first. So we have to be open about it because, and again, I apologize for all the sounds of Brooklyn, but
I was gonna say it's New York. Everybody in New York has background noise. Whatever, it is what it is.
It is what it is, you know. But just to rest assure everybody who's listening, no one's trying to arrest me.
That's what you think.
I'm not being detained. but yeah, we need. Yep.
But no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just going to say we need to go define ourselves, which is it is important about being sort of publicly a libertarian. But also, if you're going to be a public libertarian, you got to think about now what people think of you is what people are going to associate with the word libertarian, which is why I'm very cognizant of sort of the impression I leave far as and why I am consciously kind, consciously focused on things like forgiveness and emotional intelligence and whatnot, because I know that what people think of me are going to be sort of transmuted to what they think of libertarian. And then I want them at the end of the day to get those libertarian ideas. But if they associate a warm fuzziness to libertarian ideas, they're going to want to learn more about it in a sense. Or trying to kind of transmute this sort of fuzzy, warm, lovey feeling to the idea of a libertarian in a sense.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of value in trying to meet people where they're at instead of trying to drag them to where you are right off the rip, because not everybody's here and not everybody's at the same point in their particular ideological journey as we are. But I always see this online, and of course this is a very extremely online thing because I'm an extremely online person, but it's like every time libertarianism gets brought up, I see either one of two things. Either we're all a bunch of pedos, or I swear to God, and some days it's just exhausting to try to fight this stuff, but it's either we're a bunch of pedos, we're just a bunch of straight up freaking weirdos, or we're just all people that get naked at our political convention. Which, whatever,
all of the above.
Nerds, I'm sorry, people aren't getting naked at your political conventions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I agree. I mean, I actually, you know what, like, as much as people like to sit there and look about 2016 and wish certain things didn't happen, that was a fun convention. And I don't think any of the other parties can say they had a convention that was that fun and that interesting. I mean, whatever people can say about the James Weeks moment, it was just a moment. But I mean, when you take a look at like the McAfee ball, which was all the gymnasts, or even the fact that there was a comic book convention happening at the same hotel, and you couldn't tell who were the libertarians and who were the comic people. That was a good time, and that's the beauty of the libertarian message. It's not a message saying that you have to fit within some sort of, you know, conventional box. It's a message that says everybody gets to be themselves. Everyone gets to be them. So you don't have to be someone specific to have a voice. Everyone gets a voice. And so I always push back against when people say, well, I do care, you know, I do make efforts to present myself in a way to be heard. I want people pushing on the edge of that. I do want those people who push on the edges so that way more people can be heard by more people. You do need that. And when people try to sit there and say, well, these people need to buy a suit, I push against that. I'll wear a suit, but I don't think everyone should wear a suit. There needs to be your non-traditional candidates that push against the idea of what is tradition, so that way people who normally don't get heard, and that's important. And I think that's something that's uniquely libertarian, because we're uniquely trying to speak for everyone, because we're not trying to control anyone.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really important going forward for both the Libertarian Party and libertarianism in general is, okay, there is a certain level of polish that a party and a movement needs to have some kind of national appeal, but I cherish our weirdness.
Yes.
And I think going forward, especially looking at how Democrats and Republicans are acting and treating the people within their party, I think it is very important for us to still have that sort of space. And I think it's very important for us to actually promote this fact that you can be a libertarian and have disagreements with other libertarians. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this insane, nasty thing. But yes, this is a party where there are differences of thought on very important issues, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to toe a specific line.
Oh, totally agree. Like, I always try to focus on telling people that what makes us very different is that we're not talking, well, Republicans and Democrats, they're parties that focus on, well, this is what the world should be by any means necessary. Okay? We're saying the opposite. We're saying we're focusing on the means matter. The way you create the world that you want, whatever that world is, matters. Because when you create the world the wrong way, it doesn't matter how good the idea of the world you want to create is, it's already tainted. And that is a fundamental difference. We can have people who have all sorts of different sort of utopian views or views of the end game, but we all are trying to say that, you know what, the way we get there is through working together, through building consent and in every aspect of our lives, and that's a very different message. But it does create weird bedfellows, and it does create people who then conflict over their ideas of an ideal world. And again, the whole sort of left libertarian, right libertarian battle all the time. It's like, okay, you guys disagree on what the world should be in certain respects, but as long as we all agree, we're not looking to compel it on anyone, then let's focus on that. Let's focus on the people who are trying to compel us. And it's a beautiful thing. But there was somewhere else I was going to go with that, but I'll stop there for a moment.
Okay, kind of spinning off of that, because like I was saying, I do see this tendency on both now. It's been on the Democratic side for a while now, but you're starting to see this now on the Republican side with this current weird situation that I still don't even know what to say about it. I mean, I do know what to say about it. I made a whole damn episode on it, so let's not pretend like I don't know what to say about it. But this idea that they're both sides are getting extremely dogmatic about what you need to believe to say that you are a Republican or to say that you are a Democrat. And it's almost making this weird situation where we are the centrists now.
I know.
I don't understand this.
Well, I mean, it's the nature of electoral politics. I mean, this is why, to me, politics is an indictment of politics, in the sense that if you have an election where the only way to win is to get 51% of the vote, then your only goal is to get 51% of the voters to hate the other 49%. So then what happens is that you have these two parties that are constantly trying to create a message that convinces 51% of the people to not like the other 49% of the people. The problem is people are constantly changing, and there's a bunch of people who don't fit into this hate you model, so they just become disaffected and they just stop voting. So then that smaller, shrinking amount of people who are voting end up representing more and more polarized views, and you end up having a much more polarized voting base and a much polarized activist base, and then that's where you end up with this wide space in the middle. And it's not even, and that's just within the people who do vote. Then there's all these people who don't vote, and a lot of those are exactly the kind of weirdos we were talking about earlier, who just felt like no one's giving them voice. That's why it's important for us to embrace the weird, because we can reignite so many people who feel that no one cares about them or no one even acknowledges their existence, by just embracing their weirdness and getting them reactivated into politics, at the same time creating a voice of sanity for those who are in the current political center.
Yeah, and even if you go back to like 2016, like obviously Trump won, although depending on how you tend to look at things, whatever, electoral college is what it is, and I don't think that it should go anywhere, but technically speaking, if you really want to look at it, no one won in 2016, because there was more people who voted for neither candidate than voted for either candidate, and I've only seen that gap grow larger and larger and larger since the 2016 election. And I think there are just a lot of people in the center, in independents, and for what it's worth, like centrist is becoming a slur. So I do think there is just a large group of people there in the middle who are largely silent, because you don't see them on social media. You don't see them on the news or in print or anywhere. But I think there is a large swath of people who just really want to live their lives, be left the hell alone, just not be bothered by any of this. And I think that this is a great time, and I've thought this ever since Trump got elected, but especially recent events, I'm thinking this more, that there is a space for libertarians to make this pitch that hi, we are the people that just want to leave you the fuck alone. Like, hi, it's us. What's up?
Yeah, no, I agree. But an anecdote on the whole idea that like centrist has become a dirty word. To bring up Howard Schultz, like Howard Schultz was trying to pitch himself as sort of this centrist, sort of I can reconcile everybody on both sides type of candidate, and he has the highest negatives of any candidate in the field, even though he tried to occupy that sort of centrist space. Because the thing is, people have this image of centrism, and there's a lot of centrists that meet this mold, that they're not necessarily passionate about this or that issue, or they're not necessarily they're not as, what's the word I'm looking for, outraged by the things that I'm outraged of. So the fact that even though you may not necessarily disagree with me on X, Y, and Z, the fact that you're not outraged as I am, makes you a horrible person. And then this is why, exactly, and this creates this sort of cannibalizing left and right, which creates a very gap that you're talking about in the middle, which us libertarians can definitely take advantage of. And it's just a matter of literally just shaking people's hands, going out into our communities. Like I keep telling people, just go throw a barbecue. You don't need to have a meeting where you can have just a barbecue where you don't talk politics. Just let people get to know you, and they're thinking, man, that local libertarian party threw a cool barbecue. I wonder what they're all about. That could be the thing that gets them in there. Sometimes a steak does the trick.
Yeah, and it's stuff like that. And like I think we can do like more outreach right now as far as just like letting people know kind of what we're really about. And that's a problem that I think a lot of people who aren't libertarians, like obviously everybody who is a libertarian understands the concepts of what really core libertarianism is. It's like, freedom of expression, it's self-ownership, it's autonomy, it's basic stuff that like I would think that 95% of people could get down with if they knew that's what it was, but everybody gets caught up in this ephemera, and then they think libertarians are like crazy people who hate roads, and it's like, we don't hate roads, we hate taxes. And if all of our taxes just went to roads, it would actually be okay, but some of my taxes last night almost went to starting a hot war with Iran, and that's what we have a problem with.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the idea of things. It's, of course, like you said, the way we pay for things, and then also just the fact that oftentimes they don't do those things. They do other really horrible things, like the war with Iran, like putting people in the cages, like basically ruining people's possibility of gaining in life and being entrepreneurs and pursuing their dreams and just crushing people.
Yeah, and I think that we can do a better job of explaining that, but I also think that, like, if people, and I will say this, and I know people will give me shit about it, whatever, but if, like, your average non-libertarian went to, say, Reason.com and started reading articles about, say, criminal justice reform, or licensing, or the war on sex work, or the war on drugs, or anything, and started reading, like, really what the libertarian position is on it, people would be like, well, yeah, that sounds good. That seems to make sense to me in my head. Mm-hmm. So, it's a weird thing, and it's my kind of little personal pet project, which I invite everybody to join me on. But a topic I kind of want to pivot to, because of this whole current weird situation that we find ourselves in, and that is, I think, for not necessarily the first time, but the first time in a long time, I think libertarians might have a chance to get in and kind of grab conservatives. And when I say conservatives, I mean like the kind of more standard conservatives, because what seems to be becoming conservatism now does not resemble any kind of conservatism I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, I do not know what the hell this is. And all of a sudden, I mean, if David French is all of a sudden not a conservative, like, okay, who the hell is? But I think this is making this weird space open for us to maybe try to grab some of those people and pull them into the tent too.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the way I imagine, if we took a look at the politics as like the big square, I do imagine like there's this big middle square where of the center, and there's of course a right and a left center, but then there's sort of generally liberal left and right center, and then a generally illiberal left and right center. And I do feel right now that generally liberal, as sort of lowercase l liberal, left and right center right now is really feeling like they don't have a home. And I really do feel like that sort of lower rectangle of the center square could really would be receptive to the libertarian message. I do feel like sometimes some people, try to pick at very specific parts of that square, but I think that whole square can be got good. And then, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's this opportunity, and right now you have an administration that's pushing those people somewhere else, and there is nowhere better for them to go than the Libertarian Party or just the libertarian message in general.
Yeah, and it's not even that you necessarily have to join the party, but if you want to, self-identify as a libertarian doesn't necessarily mean you have to join the LP, although I'm sure you would prefer everybody to join the LP.
Yes, because they get a card. It's a cool card. It has your name on it. It's very nice. And then if you do the $1,500, you get the pin. I love my pin.
But, yeah, I bring all this up because I'm sure you've already heard about the whole First Things controversy about David French, and even the piece before that back in March against the Dead Consensus, which I did an episode on. A couple of people commented on back then, but now it's becoming kind of like a thing. And the thing that struck me when I first read that first piece back in March was that this isn't necessarily an attack on other conservatives or other Republicans. It's an attack on libertarians, and basically telling us that we are no longer welcome in the conservative movement.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens, because libertarians are great when you're out of power. So if you are sort of the liberal right or left, basically libertarians are a great ally when you're out of power, because who better to have along with you than people who are advocating to take power away from the people you don't like. But once you have power, you don't want those libertarians around you anymore, because they're telling you to stop playing with all your new toys. And that's kind of how the liberal conservatives are right now. They have control of all the levers of power, and they're like, wait, you guys were fun when Obama was around, and we wanted to take power away from Obama. But now that we got the stuff, you guys are annoying and telling us to not have our fun, so go away. So it's just kind of this shifting. That's the thing about being a libertarian. It's like you constantly feel like you found friends, and then eventually when you and your friends get somewhere, your friends kick you out because you're no longer fun to have around. And this happens to us over and over again.
And yeah, you can see it even now with the Justin Amash situation and what's happened to the House Freedom Caucus. It's like, okay, 10 years ago, this all started out as this very noble experiment that we are going to get libertarians into the Republican Party, and we're going to shift things that way. And obviously, at this point, I think we can all admit that hasn't worked. That's been a failure at this point, honestly. I mean, it sucks to say that, but now that Amash is not part of the House Freedom Caucus, what? They're just a bunch of Trump cheerleaders now at this point. And They basically, cast Amash out into the wilderness for daring to say, hey, I think, Trump could be impeached off of the Mueller report, which I don't know if I entirely 100% agree with him, but I don't think that Amash should be, shot into the sun for having this opinion. I'm still baffled at the whole response to that whole situation, because I just view it as okay, here's a thing that we don't agree on. Okay, so what? But it's so it's the conservative movement is so weird now. I don't even know what to say about it.
Agreed. It's not even uncharacteristic of Amash. Since Amash has been in office, he literally puts out tweets on everything, that every kind of issue, every kind of vote. But he always does it, after taking some time to kind of really think about it thoroughly. So of course, it's not like everyone's like, oh, why did he take so long to do it? Because he read the report. And whether you agreed with him or not, it was coming from a place of thoughtful reflection. You can disagree with it, you can agree with it, but it was Amash being Amash. I mean, it wasn't everyone kind of say, well, maybe he did it for this reason or that reason, but this is what he always does. It's Justin Amash, and that's what we love about Justin Amash, that he's transparent and willing to express and not hide when it's politically convenient for him to hide.
Yeah, and it's really an example to me of this sort of dogmaticness, like I was saying, on both the left and also now on the right with Republicans, to where you have to have certain opinions, and if you do not have those opinions, then all of a sudden you need to be shipped to outer Siberia because you disagree with this one thing. And it's so... I don't even know what conservatism is anymore, and I see them trying to redefine it, and it does not involve us, which leaves people like David French and other people who are more civil libertarians, maybe not full-on libertarians the way we are, but people who do have those kinds of leanings are about to be, or have been, kicked off the island. And I want to get them on our island. Like, we're over here, guys. So this is kind of my overreaching project, is to try to figure out a way that being a libertarian isn't considered like this weird thing that like you have to run from, or even parse it as I see classic liberal making a comeback, and I don't know how I feel about that. I'm sure in like 6 months I'm going to be so sick of hearing classic liberal and just be screaming at people like, just identify as a libertarian already.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I agree. Like, I mean, I like the word classical liberal. I like the word libertarian. I like to think of myself as sort of I'm a little bit of every, or a libertarian by and large, far as I love the whole spectrum, because I've been everywhere at some point or other in the last 10 years. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just about getting a broadly libertarian message, having different libertarian messengers and a diverse libertarian messengers, because different people appeal to different folks. Like, a lot of people sit there and say, well, I really like the message that this libertarian delivers, but I don't like that one. Well, then that person's not speaking to you. You're not their audience. That's fine. You don't need to be their audience. You be the audience for the people who connect with you, but there's someone out there who is that person's audience, and they may have not heard the libertarian message otherwise because that person was not out there. So it's just, it really is about, the death by 1,000 cuts, or liberty by 1,000 voices, and having all these different voices that connect with people. So I appreciate the diversity of the libertarian island, and what I try to do is just to try to foster an okayness with having this space of diverse voices, and because that is how we grow. I mean, there's when I go to all sorts of events, like if I go to a football game, honestly, I'm not going to connect with people as well there. I like comic books, video games, and prog rock, so it's not really my audience. But there are other people who will connect with that audience, and they should be talking to those people, etc.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we need to be more cautious of within our own movement. And again, everybody can conduct themselves however they see fit, whatever, but I personally am not one for internecine fighting. I mean, if we're all working towards the same goal, like, okay, I employ the 80-20 rule. Like, if I can agree with you on 80% of things, I can let 20% of the things slide. And as far as trying to bring people kind of into the fold and into the tent, I think sometimes, like, if you're not already in the scene and you kind of don't already know how some of these things can boil down, especially on very controversial topics, you might walk in and be like, holy shit, and then turn around and walk right back out, because this can get a little ugly sometimes. But yeah, I think that's something that I don't know. I think we all need to be a little nicer to each other. And I think also on a more outward-facing thing, that a thing that I see a lot is this idea that non-libertarians have, that libertarians are a monolith on certain topics, especially things like open borders and immigration, and especially abortion. And it's like, oh no. No. Come visit some of our arguments on this. Like, this is not a monolith by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. Like, especially in a lot of online forums. I mean, I think in online forums you'll find, in all progressive, conservative, libertarian, you're just going to find people being extra bitter and nasty to each other. One is just because it's a lot less consequential than when you see someone in person, they might throw a punch, so you're a little bit more careful. But also, it's a lot of online mediums are for me. This is why, like, there is a need for sort of curated libertarian spaces. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be uncurated. There should be sort of free-for-all libertarian spaces, but there should also be curated spaces. You need a little bit of everything. And that's what I try to create in some of the Facebook groups that I create, like the Libertarian Encouragement Space, which is a Facebook group where, it's a little bit more moderated, but it's there meant to have sort of a more encouraging discussion that can encourage people into action and learning more. Because there's already plenty of spaces where people can just duke it out and say, hey, I'm holier than thou. I can't believe you believe that. Pox on your house. So I do think, like, a lot of people always talk about like free speech, and I'm all for free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist, but it doesn't necessarily mean there shouldn't be spaces where there are spaces that are curated for those who may need a curated space. It doesn't necessarily mean people can't have uncurated spaces, or and again, it's all done on a consensual basis in a sense, but I don't want to use the term safe space, but I'm really trying to avoid it. But the point is, there needs to be sort of it's kind of like in sales. You create a funnel. You don't sell to everybody at one time. You create different sort of levels to keep filtering the people who are most likely to buy, and you put them through a process that kind of introduces them to your product. Because people always tell me, it's like, oh, you know what, if libertarian ideas are so good, we don't need to dress them up, we don't need to do this and this and this, they'll just sell themselves. That's what everybody feels about their product. Like when you're in sales, everyone thinks their product is so amazing that it should sell itself, but that's not the way any product works. Even the best products need to be sold. They need good marketing messaging and whatnot. And there needs to be people who do care about that and do that. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone does. I don't imagine everyone of every ideology is a salesperson. But the libertarian space does need more salespeople. That's why I love people like Larry Sharp. I aspire to try to be like Larry Sharp, but Larry Sharp is amazing and a really a unique figure in that regard. But I definitely learned a lot from him over the years. But we need more people like that who care about selling the idea and selling the message in that process of selling.
And I think it's not only just selling, but trying to explain the message. I mean, it's one thing, and I know a lot of us have our inside jokes, we have our memes, and people outside of us don't really understand some of our inside jokes. Like when we say taxation is theft, we mean it. Like, it's not a joke, like we mean it. Mm-hmm. But you might need to explain to somebody outside of our movement, like you might need to handhold them and explain, like, okay, this is what we mean when we say taxation is theft. Mm-hmm. This is what we mean when we say, like, autonomy and self-ownership, and that you own your body, and this is why we feel the way we do about drug legalization, or about sex work, or even about taxation, if you want to get down to it, because, I mean, obviously you are selling your labor for money, and you should get to keep the money that you made, and you shouldn't have to be forced to give it to another entity who will then use it for things that you may personally find unjust or immoral or just plain don't like. So, I think as far as outreach, like, we need to just get better at explaining the reasons why we feel the way we feel, and maybe understand that it's not always self-evident to somebody outside the movement, and somebody who doesn't know what we know, hasn't read the books that we've read, mm-hmm. which there's a lot of books that are, becoming a libertarian involves reading a lot of books, which is mm-hmm. kind of a hurdle right there. It's like, here's the things you should read, and here's 40 pounds of books, so go do that. But yeah, I think there is room to get better at messaging, and I think that, I mean, everybody who does have a public voice, I mean, and not everybody wants to do this or has the capability to do this, and that's fine too. But if you do, then maybe try to start orienting towards explaining to people who aren't libertarians what it is to actually be a libertarian, as opposed to, like, are weird sort of stereotypes that kind of float around in the ether of what being a libertarian is.
Yeah, because, I mean, oftentimes, like, and you're right with the books, in the sense that to get to be sort of this sort of idealized philosophical libertarian, it's a journey, because really what you're asking is for people to let go of all their anxieties about other people, in the sense that, really, I'm just going to let them do what they want. and that takes a lot of introspection. It takes time. It takes a lot of questioning. I mean, we all had a lot of questions about, like, really, like, how would this work? How would this work? And it required all that reading. But so I definitely agree that to get people to that point is a lot to ask people and a lot to expect people to do. Like, most of us took years to get there, and then we expect people to be there in a moment in one conversation, especially, if we say taxation is theft, they somehow magically get there. And then I agree, we need to communicate. But I do think, just to kind of on the communication versus sales thing, I do think communication in a sense is sales. And what was I going with that? But no, we want to talk to people better. And so those who do like to communicate, those who do care about communication should try to do it better, and then try to realize that we need to explain the message in a way that doesn't assume all this work has already been done.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the message that I want to leave off on this with, is trying to, maybe everybody listening to this, just try to maybe explain to people who you see I think there are a lot of people out there that if you just, like, straight up printed off the LP platform and handed it to them and were like, is there anything on this list that you object to? Most people would probably say no. Because it's either pointing out that you do have rights, or that the state does not have the right to make a decision for you, which that's a whole nother ball of wax too, is explaining to people that, like, no, you don't need the state to make these decisions for you, and you don't need them to make them for anybody else. Everybody gets to be a grown-up, everybody gets to be an adult, everybody gets to make their decisions, and you don't need a nanny state to hold your hand. But I think it's, if we could get better at explaining that and kind of packaging that in a way that would be appealing to, like I said, a lot of these people who are starting to find themselves politically homeless. And I see it online all the time, people claiming to be politically homeless. They were part of the left, they were part of the right, and now they don't feel like they have a home anymore. And I'm just like, you guys, we're over here. We are the people you are looking for. If you just come over here, we're fine. We're friendly people. We have snacks. You can disagree with us. It's fine. Like, we're not scary people. And our ideas aren't all that scary when you really sit down and think about them logically and realize that, like, yeah, this all pretty much makes sense. So, on that point, this is the point in the interview where I invite you to plug all of your various things, platforms, social media, podcasts, whatever you've got.
Okay, I hope we got time, but before I do that, I just wanted to say, yeah, we're not a scary bunch. I mean, this is one of the things I've been saying a lot as I've been on the convention circuit this year, that one of the most important things that the libertarian movement provides, and I want to also emphasize this within the Libertarian Party. I'm trying to grow this within the Libertarian Party, is the idea of community. Because that libertarian community, when I go to libertarian events, people are carpooling, they're taking care of each other's kids, they're giving each other a place to stay. And the community we build as libertarians is one of the strongest arguments for our ideas. It allows us to kind of, it shows that a voluntary society can exist. Even though it's not a physical piece of land somewhere, the libertarian community is that libertarian society at work. And when people sit there and they see us get along and be nice to each other, or I don't want to say be nice, but be family with each other, people will want to be part of that. And when they want to be part of that, they will want to learn the ideas behind it as well. And that'll actually grow the message. So honestly, one of the best ways to grow the message and spread the message is just to love each other. And I know that always sounds weird, but I always harken back to when I was in college. There was always like this organization, Crew, which was, I think, the Christian Crusade or something like that. They were a Christian organization, but they rarely would beat you over the head with religion. They just invited you to fun events and whatnot. And it kind of made you kind of curious about religion a little bit more. Versus when I go on the subways here in New York City, there's a guy screaming at me, hell and brimfire, and the last thing I want to do is hear anything he has to say. So there is sort of a difference in sort of building that relationship first. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there. And now I'll talk about all the stuff. So you can find everything that I do over there at alexmerced.com, which includes podcasts, which you can find on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, my YouTube channel. I've written a book called Profits Are Generosity, and I'm working on a new book called The Libertarian Heart, which should hopefully be out by the end of the year. There is all my Facebook pages. Literally, if you just go to alexmerced.com, you'll find all the stuff. But I've also curated websites that are great sort of introduction websites for people. So if you feel like you don't necessarily have all the words in that moment to say what you want to say about libertarianism or about other things, I probably have a website for you, whether it's libertarian101.com for libertarianism, learneconomicsnow.com for economics, or bitcoinblockchaincrypto.com regarding the Bitcoin and blockchain space. So I try to create a lot of educational materials out there because I want to make it easier for people to get ideas out there, not whether they just share my videos or also if they learn some new ways to say a little bit about this or that through my videos. It's all about just trying to improve that ability to communicate and get that message out there, but also lately trying to promote that idea of community and using community and aspiration as a way to transmute ideas and knowledge. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking with me about this. I really do appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime, man.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks. So that was my very lovely conversation with Alex. I hope there are some things in there that gave all of you guys kind of something to think about and kind of a way going forward that we can possibly start promoting libertarianism to a wider group of people, like I said, especially the politically homeless, because this is something that I'm starting to see happen more and more as people from the right push people out as much as people from the left push people out. And I do really think that there is an opportunity here for us to try to welcome these people kind of into the area of libertarianism, because I do think that a lot of these people would be able to find a home in our tent. So I just something to think about, I do think. And I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this, and I hope you did get something out of it. And as always, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So if you did like it, thank you. And if you did make it this far, thank you. And as always, rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.